point that makes sense. So he's been in the room with the people that he works with, the house people, right? Here it is. The room turned darker and colder, and the gloom and shadow gathered behind the chair was heavier. Not content with this, sir, Mrs. Williams goes and finds this very night when she was coming home, why, it's not above a couple of hours ago, a creature more like a young wild beast than a wild child shivering upon a doorstep. What does Mrs. Williams do but bring it to our home to dry it and feed it and keep it till our old bounty of food and flannel is given away on Christmas morning? If ever felt a fire before, it's much as if it ever did, for it's sitting in the old lodge chimney, staring at ours as if its ravenous eyes would never shut again. It's still there at least, said Mr. Williams, correcting himself on reflection, unless it bolted. Heaven keep her happy, said the chemist. Aloud, and to you, Philip, and to you, William, I must consider what to do in all this. I may desire to see this student. I'll not detain you longer. Good night. I thank thee, sir, I thank thee, said the old man, for Mouse and for my son, William, and for myself. Where's my son, William? William, you take the ladder and go on first through them long dark passages, as you did last year and the year before. Ha, I remembered. Though I'm 87, Lord, keep my memory green. It's ever good prayer, Mr. Redlaw, that of the learned gentleman. In the peaked beard with the ruff around his neck, hanging up second to the right above the paneling that used to be for 10 poor gentlemen commuted to our dinner hall. Lord, keep my memory green. It's very good and pious, sir. Amen. Amen. Welcome in, Scovey. We are reading Charles Dickens' last Christmas haunting story called Haunted Man and the Ghost. So let me keep going. As they passed out and shut the heavy door, which, however carefully withheld, fire a long train of thundering reverberation, when it shut at last, the room turned still darker. As he fell a musing in his chair alone, the healthy holly withered on the wall and dropped dead branches. As the gloom and shadows thickened behind him, in that place where it had been gathering so darkly, it took by slow degrees, or out of it came by some unreal, unsubstantial process, not to be traced by any human sense, an awful liking of himself. Ghastly and cold, colorless in its leaden face and hands, but with his features and his bright eyes and his grizzled hair, and dressed in the gloomy shadow of his dress, it came into the terrible appearance of existence, motionless. Without a sound, as he leaned his arm upon the elbow of his chair, ruminating before the fire, it leaned upon the back of the chair, close above him, with an appalling copy of his face, looking where his face looked, bearing the expression of his face. This was the something that had passed and gone already. This was the dreaded companion of the haunted man. It took for some moments no more apparent heed of him than he did of it. The Christmas waits were playing somewhere in the distance, and through his thoughtfulness, he seemed to listen to the music. It seemed to listen too. At length he spoke without moving or lifting up his face. "Here again," he said. "Here again," replied the phantom. "I see you in the fire and the haunted man. I hear you in the music, in the wind, in the dead stillness of the night." The phantom moved its head, assessing. "Why do you come to haunt me thus?" "I came as I'm called," replied the ghost. "No, unbidden," exclaimed the chemist. "Unbidden be it," said the spectre. "It is enough. I am here." Hitherto the light of the fire had shone on two faces. Of the dread lamentations behind the chair might be called a face, both addressed towards it as at first, and neither looking at the other. But now the haunted man turned suddenly and stared upon the ghost. The ghost, as sudden in his motion, passed to before the chair and stared on him. The living man and the animated image of himself dead might also have looked the one upon the other, an awful survey in a lonely and remote part of an empty old pile of a building on a winter night, with a loud wind going by upon its journey of misery. Whence or whither, no man knows, since the world began, and the stars and unimaginable millions glittered through it from eternal space, where the world's bulk as a grain, and its hurrah ago is infancy. "Look upon me," said the spectre. "I am he, neglected in my youth and miserably poor, who strove and suffered and still strove and suffered, until I hewed out knowledge from the mind where it was buried, and made rugged steps therefore of my own warm feet to rest and rise on. I am that man," returned the chemist. "No, mother's self-denying love," pursued the phantom. "No father's counsel aided me. A stranger came into my father's place when I was but a child, and I was easily an alien from my mother's heart. My parents at best were the sort who care soon ends and whose duty is soon done, who cast their offspring loose early as a bird to theirs, and if they do well, calm and merit, and if the pity," it paused and seemed to temper it and goad him with a look and with the manner of its speech, and with a smile. "I am he," pursued the phantom, "who in this struggle upward found a friend. I made him, won him, bound him to me. We worked together side by side. All the love and confidence in that of my earlier youth had no outlet and found no expression. I bestowed upon him Not all, said Redlaw hoarsely. No, not all, returned the phantom. I had a sister. Hey, gaming fairy, welcome in. We're still reading our haunted man's ghost bargain. I had a sister, the haunted man with his head resting on his hands replied. I had. The phantom with an evil smile drew closer to the chair and resting his chin upon its folded hands upon the back, and looking down into his face with searching eyes that seemed instinct with the fire, went on. Such glimpses of the light of home as I had ever known had streamed from her. How young she was, how fair, how loving. I took her to the first poor roof that I could master of, and made it rich. She came into the darkness of my life and made it bright. She is before me. I saw her in the fire, but now I hear her in music, in the wind, in the dead stillness of the night, returned the haunted man. Did he love her? Said the phantom, echoing his compulsive tone. I think he did once. I am sure he did. Better had she loved him less secretly, less dearly, from the shallower depths, or more of a more divided heart. Let me forget it, said the chemist with an angry motion of his hand. Let me blot out all from my memory. The spectre, without stirring, and with its unwinking, cruel eyes still fixed upon his face, went on. A dream like hers stole upon my own life. It did, said Redlaw. A love as like hers, pursued the phantom, as my inferior nature might cherish, arose in my own heart. I was too poor to bind its object to my future by any thread of promise or entry. I loved her far too well to seek to do it, but more than ever, I had striven in my life. I strove to climb. Only an inch gained brought me something nearer to the height I toiled up. In the late pauses of my labors at that time, my sister, my sweet companion, still sharing with me the expiring embers and the cooling hearth. When day was breaking, what picture of the future did I see? I saw them in the fire, but now, he murmured, they came back to me in the music, in the wind, in the dead stillness of the night, in the revolving years. Pictures of my own domestic life in after time, with her who was the inspiration of my toil. Pictures of my sister, made the wife of my dear friend on equal terms, for he had some inheritance, we had none. Pictures of our somber age and mellowed happiness, and of the golden links extended back so far that should bind us and our children in a radiant garland, said the phantom. Pictures, said the haunted man, that were delusions. Why, it's my doom to remember them too well. Delusions, echoed the phantom in a changeless voice, and glaring on him with changeless eyes. Yes, Marley is in his chair sleeping. I'll show you at the end. Delusions for my friend, and whose brief in my breast my confidence was locked as in my own, passing between me and the center of our system of my hopes and struggles, won her to himself and shattered my frail universe. My sister, doubly dear, doubly devoted, doubly cheerful, in my home lived on to see me famous, and my old ambition, so rewarded when it was spring, was broken. And then, and then, he interrupted, died, gentle as ever, happy, with no concern but for her brother. Peace. The phantom watched him silently. Remember, said the haunted man after a pause. Yes, so well remembered that even now years have passed, and nothing is more idle or more visionary to me than the boyish love, so long outlived. I think of it with sympathy, as if it were a younger brother or a son. Sometimes I even wonder when her first heart inclined to him and how it had been affectionate towards me. Not lightly once, I think, but that is nothing. Early unhappiness, a wound from a hand I loved and trusted, a loss that nothing can replace, outlive such fancies. Thus, said the phantom, I hear within me a sorrow and a wrong. Thus, I prey upon myself. Thus, memory is my curse. And if I could forget my sorrows and my wrongs, I would. Mocker, said the chemist, leaping up and making with a wrathful hand at the throat of his other self. Why, I've always that taunt in my ears. Forbearance, exclaimed the spectre in an awful voice. Lay a hand on me and die. He stopped midway, as if the words had paralyzed him, and stood looking on it. It had glided from him, and had its arms raised high in warning. A smile passed over his unearthly features. It reared a dark figure of triumph. Sorrows and wrongs I would, the ghost repeated. If I could forget my sorrows and wrongs, I would. Evil spirit of myself, returned the haunted man in a low, trembling tone. My life is darkened by that incessant whisper. It is an echo, said the phantom. If it be an echo of my thoughts, as now indeed I know it is, rejoined the haunted man, why should I therefore be tormented? It is not a selfish thought. I suffer it to range beyond myself. All men and women have their sorrows, most of them wrongs, ingratitudes, or sordid jealousies, and interest besetting all degrees of life. Who would not forget their sorrows and their wrongs? Who would not, truly, and be the happier for it, said the phantom. These revelations of years which we commemorate, proceeded Redlaw. Why do they recall? Are there any minds in which they do not reawaken? Some sorrow or some trouble? What is the remembrance of an old man who is here tonight? A tissue of sorrow and trouble. But common natures, said the phantom, with its evil smile upon its glassy face. Unenlightened minds and ordinary spirits do not feel or reason on these things like men of higher cultivations and profound works. Temper, answered Redlaw. Whose hallowed looks and voice I dread more than the words can express, and from whom some dim foreshadow of greater fear is stealing over me while I speak, I hear again an echo of my own mind. Receiving it as proof that I am powerful, returned the ghost. Hear what I offer. Forget the sorrow and the wrongs and troubles you had known. Forget them, he repeated. I have the power to cancel their remembrance, to leave but very faint, confused traces of them that will soon die out. Returned the spectre. Say, is it done? Stay, cried the haunted man, arrested by a terrified gesture, the uplifted hand. I tremble in distrust and doubt of you, and the dim fear you cast upon me deepens into the nameless horror I can hardly bear. I would not deprive myself of any kindly reflections or any sympathies that is good for me or others. What shall I lose if I assist to this? What else will pass from my remembrances? No knowledge, no recall of study, nothing but the intertwisted chains of feeling and association, each in turn dependent on and nourished by the banished recollection. Those will go. Are there so many? Said the haunted man, reflecting in alarm. There have been wont to show themselves in the fire, in music, in the wind, in the dead silence of the night, and the revolving years, returned the phantom scornfully. In nothing else, the phantom held its peace. By having stood before him silent for a little while, it moved towards the fire and then stopped. Decide, it said, before the opportunity is lost. A moment, I call heaven to witness, said the agitated man, that I have never been a hater of my kind, never morose, indifferent, or hard to anything around me. If living here alone I made too much of all that was and might have been, and too little of what is, the evil, I believe, has fallen on me, and not on others. But if there were poison in my body, should I not possess the antidotes and knowledge how to use them? Then use them? If there be poison on my mind, and through this fearful shadow I can cast it out, shall I not cast it out? Say, said the spectre, is it done? A moment longer, he answered hurriedly. I would forget it if I could. Have I thought that alone, or has it been the thought of thousands upon thousands, generation after generation, all Human memory is fraught with sorrows and troubles. My memory is the memory of other men, but other men have not this choice. Yes, I close the bargain. Yes, I will forget my sorrows, wrongs, and troubles. Say, said the spectre, it is done. It is. It is. And take this with you, man, whom I here renounce. The gift that I have given, you shall give again. Go where you will, without recovering yourself the powers that you have yielded up. You shall henceforth destroy its like in all whom you approach. Your wisdom has discovered that the memory of sorrow, wrong, and trouble is the lot of mankind, and that mankind would be happier in its other memories without it. Go, be its benefactor, freed from such remembrances. From this hour, carry involuntarily the blessings of such freedom. And inalienable from you, go, be happy in the good you have won and in the good you do. The phantom, which had held its bloodless hand above him while he spoke, as if in some unholy invocation or some ban, and which had gradually advanced its eyes so close to his that he could see how they did not participate in the terrible smile upon his face, but were fixed, unalterable, steady. Horror melted from before him and was gone. Welcome, blessed. Thank you for stopping in. We are reading The Haunted Man and the Ghost Bargains by Charles Dickens. As he stood rooted to the spot, possessed by fear and wonder, and imagined he heard repeated in melancholy echoes, dying away like fainter and fainter the words, destroy its like in all whom you approach. A shrill cry reached his ears. It came not from the passages beyond the door, but from another part of the old building, and sounded like the cry of someone in the dark who had lost the way. He looked confusedly upon his hands and limbs as if he assured of his identity, and then shouted in reply, loud and wildly, for there was a strangeness and terror upon him, as if he were lost. The cry responded, and being nearer, he caught up the lamp and raised the heavy curtain in the wall by which he was accustomed to, and passed into and out of the theater where he lectured, which adjoined his room, an amphitheater of faces, which his interests charmed to interest in a moment. It was a ghastly place when all this life was faded out of it and stared upon him like an emblem of death. Hello, he cried. Hello, this way, come to the light. When he held the curtain with one hand and with the other raised the lamp and tried to pierce the gloom that filled the place, something rushed past him into the room like a wild cat and crouched down in the corner. What is it? He said hastily. He might have asked, what is it? Even had he seen it well, and presumably he did, when he stood looking at gathered up in the corner a bundle of tatters held together by a hand the size and form almost an infant, but in greedy, desperate little clutch. A bad old man's, a face rounded and smooth by some half-dozen years, but pinched and twisted by the experiences of life. Bright eyes, but not youthful, naked feet, beautiful in their childish delicacy, ugly in the blood and dirt that cracked upon them. A baby savage, a young monster, a child who had never been a child, a creature who might live to take the outward form of man, but who within would live and perish, a mere beast, unused already to be worried and haunted like the beast. The boy crouched down as he was looked at and looked back again, and interposed his arms to ward off the expectant blow. "I'll bite," he said, "if you hit me." The time had been, and not many minutes since, when such a sight as this would have wrung the chemist's heart. He looked upon it now coldly, but with a healthy effort to remember something, he did not know what. He asked the boy what he did there and whence he came. "Where's the woman?" he repeated. "I want to find the woman." "Who?" "The woman. Her that brought me here and set me by the large fire. She was so long gone that I went to look for her and lost myself. I don't want you. I want the woman." He made a spring so suddenly to get away from the dull sound of his feet upon the floor, and was near the curtain when Redlaw caught him by his rags. "Come, you let me go," muttered the boy, struggling and clenching his teeth. "I've done nothing to you. You let me go. You let me go to that woman." "That's not the way. There is a nearer one," said Redclaw, detaining him in the same blank effort to remember some association that ought to be right upon this mysterious, monstrous object. "What is your name?" "Got none." "Where do you live?" "Live? What's that?" The boy shook his hair from his eyes to look at him for a moment, and then twisting around his legs and wrestling with him, broke again into the repetition of, "You'll let me go, will you? I want to find the woman." The chemist led him to the door. "This way," he said, looking at him still confusedly, but with repugnance and avoidance growing out of his coldness. "I'll take you to her." The sharp eyes in the child's head, wandering around the room, lighted on the table where the remnants of dinner were. "Give me some of that," he said covetedly. "Has she not fed you? I shall be hungry again tomorrow, shan't I? Ain't I hungry every day?" Finding himself released, he bounded the table like some small animal of prey, and, hanging to his breast bread and meat and his own rags all together. "There, now take me to the woman." As the chemist, with a newborn dislike to touching him, sternly motioned for him to follow, and was going out of the door, he trembled and stopped. The gift that I have given you, you shall give again. Go where you will." The phantom's words were blowing in the wind, and the wind blew chills upon him. "I will not go there tonight," he murmured faintly. "I will not go nowhere tonight." The boy straightened down the long arched passageway and past the great dark doors into the yard. "You will see the fire shining in the window there." "The woman's fire?" inquired the boy. He nodded, and the naked feet had sprung away. He came back with his lamp, locking his door hesitantly, and sat down in his chair, covering his face like one who was frightened at himself, for now he was a man of the gift diffused. Is the name of the chapter. A small man sat in a small parlor, positioned off from a small shop by a small screen, pasted all over with small scraps of newspaper. In a company with a small man was almost any amount of small children you may please to name. At least it seemed they made in a very limited sphere of action such an imposing effect in point of numbers. Of these small fry, two had, by some strong machinery, been got into bed in a corner where they might have reposed snugly enough in the sleep of innocence, but for a constitutional propensity to keep awake and also to scuffle in and out of bed. The immediate occasion of these predatory dashes at the waking world was the construction of an oyster-shelled wall in the corner by two other youths of tender age, on which fortification the two in the bed made a harassing descent, like the accursed poet and the Scots, who beleaguered the early historical studies of most of the youth of Britain and withdrew into their own territory. In addition to their attendance on these inroads and the retorts of the invading, who pursued hotly and made lunge at the bedclothes under which the marauders took refuge, another little boy and another little bed, contributing his mite of confusion to the family stock by casting his boots upon the waters, in other words, by launching these and several small objects in offense in themselves, though the hard substance considered a missile at the disturbers of his repose, who was not slow in returning these compliments. Besides, with another little boy, the biggest there, but still little, was tottering to and fro, bent on one side, and considerably affected in his knees by the weight of a large baby, which he was supposed by a fiction that obtained something in in families to be hushing to sleep. But oh, the inexhaustible regions of complaints and watchfulness into which this baby's eyes were then only beginning to compose themselves to stare over his unconscious shoulder. It was very malak of a baby on whose insatiable altar the whole existence of this particular young brother was offered up a daily sacrifice. It is personally may be said to have consisted in its ever being quiet and in any one place for 5 consecutive minutes, was never going to sleep when required. Tetterby's baby was as well known in the neighborhood as the postman or the potboy. It rode from doorstep to doorstep in the arms of the little Johnny Tetterby, and lagged heavily at the rear of the troops of juveniles who followed the tumblers or the monkeys and came up all on one side, a little too late for everything that was attractive. From Monday morning till Saturday night, wherever childhood congregates to play, there was little Malak, making Johnny work and toil. Wherever Johnny desired to stay, little Malak became fractious and would not remain. Whenever Johnny wanted to go out, Malak was asleep and must be watched. Whenever Johnny wanted to stay at home, Malak was awake and must be taken out. Yet Johnny was very rarely pursued, that it was a faultless baby without its peers in the realm of England, and was quite content to catch meek glimpses of things in general from behind the skirts or over its limp bonnet, and to go staggering about with it like a little porter with a very large parcel which was not directed to anybody and could never be delivered anywhere. The small man who sat in the small parlor making fruitless attempts to read his newspaper peacefully in the midst of this disturbance was the father of the family and the chief of the firm described in the inscription over the little shop front by the name and the title of A. Titteray and Company, newsman. Indeed, strictly speaking, he was the only personage answering to that designation as company, and was merely poetic abstraction, although baseless and impersonal. Titterby was the corner shop in the Jerusalem building. There was a good show of literature in the window, chiefly consisting of pictures and newspapers out of date, and serial pirates, and and footpads, walking sticks, likewise, and marbles were included in the stock in trade. It had once extended into the light confectionery line, but it would seem that those elegancies of life were not in demand in Jerusalem building, for nothing connected with that branch of commerce remained in the windows, except for a sort of small glass lantern containing a languishing mass of bullseye, which had melted in the summer and coagulated in the winter till all hopes of ever getting them out or eating them was gone forever. Tetterby's had tried its hand at several things. It had once been a feeble little dart at the toy business, for in another lantern there was a heap of minute wax dolls, all sticking together upside down in the dearest confusion, with their feet all on one another's head, and the precipice of a broken arm and legs at the bottom. It had made a move into the military direction, with a few dry, wary bonnet shapes remained in the corner of the window to attest. It had fancied that a living might lie hidden in the tobacco trade, and had struck up a representation of a native of each of the three integral proportions of the British Empire in the act of consuming that fragrant weed, with a poetic legend attached, importing that united in one cause, they sat and joked and chewed tobacco. One took snuff and one smoked. But nothing seemed to have come of it except flies. Time had been when it had put a forlorn trust in the intimacy and jewelry, for in one pane of the glass there was a card of cheap seals, and another in a pencil case, and a mysterious black amulet of inscrutable intentions labeled 9 pence. But to that honor, the Jerusalem building had bought none of them. In short, Tetterby's had tried so hard to get a livelihood out of the Jerusalem building in one way or another, and appeared to have done so indifferently at all, that the best position in the firm was to eventually companies, Coes, as a bodiless creation, being untroubled with the vulgar inconveniences of hunger and thirst, being chargeable neither to the poor rates or the excessive taxes, and having no young family to provide for. Tetterby himself, however, in this little parlor was, as already mentioned, having the presence of the young family impressed upon his mind, and the manner too clamorous to be disregarded, or to comport with the quiet perusal of a newspaper, laid down his paper, wheeled in his distraction a few times around the parlor like an undecided carrier pigeon, made an ineffectual little figures in the background that skimmed past him, and then bearing suddenly down upon him with the offending member of the family boxed in the ears of little Malak's nurse. "Oh, you bad boy," said Mr. Tetterby, "haven't you any feeling for your poor father after the figures and anxieties of a hard winter's day? Since 5 o'clock in the morning you but must wither his rest and corrode his latest intellectual intelligence with your vicious tricks. Isn't it enough, sir, that your brother Dolphus is toiling and mulling in the fog and cold, and you rolling on top of the luxury with a baby and everything you can wish for?" said Mr. Dockerby, heaping this upon a great climax of blessings. "But you must make a wilderness of this home, and mannix of your parents, must you, Johnny? Hey, at each interrogation, Mr. Tetterby made a feint of boxing his ears again, but thought better of it, and held his head. "Oh, father," whimpered Johnny, "when I wasn't doing anything, I'm sure, but taking such good care of Sally and getting her to sleep. Oh, father." "I wish my little woman would come home," said Mr. Tetterby, relenting and repeating, "I only wish my little woman would come home. I ain't fit to deal with them. They make my head go round and get the better of me. Oh, Johnny, isn't it enough your dear mother has provided you with, that sweet sister," indicating Moloch? "Isn't it enough that you were 7 boys before without any ray of a gal, and that your dear mother went through what she did go through on purpose that you might all of you have a little sister? But must you so behave yourself as to make my head swim?" Softening more and more on his own tender feelings, and those words of his injured son were worked on Mr. Tetterby concluded by embracing him and immediately breaking away to catch one of the real delinquents. A reasonably good start occurred. He succeeded after a short but smart run and some rather severe cross-country work under and over the bedsteads and in and out among the intricacies of the chairs in capturing the infant who he was cordoning off and pushed back into bed. This example had a powerful and apparently mesmeric influence on him of the boots, who instantly fell into a deep sleep, though he had been at a moment before wide awake and in the highest possible feather. Nor was it lost upon the two young architects, who retrieved to bed in an adjoining closet with great privacy and speed. The comrade of the intercepted, also one shrinking into the nest with singular discretion. Mr. Tetterby, when he paused for a breath, found himself unexpectedly in a scene of peace. My little woman herself, said Mr. Tetterby, wiping his flushed face, could hardly have done it any better. I only wish my little woman had to do it. I do indeed. Mr. Tetterby sought upon his screen for a passage appropriate to be impressed upon his children's mind on the occasion, and read the following. It is an undoubtable fact that all remarkable men have had remarkable mothers and have respected them in the afterlife as their best friends. Think of your own remarkable mother, my boys, said Mr. Tetterby, and know her value while she is still among you. He sat down again in his chair by the fire and composed himself cross-legged over his newspaper. Let anybody, I don't care who it is, get out of bed again, said Mr. Tetterby, as a general proclamation, and delivered a very soft-hearted manner, and astonishment will be the proportion that I respectfully contemplate. With expression, Mr. Tetterby selected from his screen, Johnny, my child, take care of your only sister, Sally, for she is the brightest gem that ever sparkled on your early brow. Johnny sat down on the little stool and benevolently crushed himself beneath the weight of Malak. Ah, what a gift that baby is to you, Johnny, said his father, and how thankful you ought to be. It is not generally known, Johnny. He was now referring to the screen again, but it is a fact ascertained by accurate calculations that the following immense percentage of babies never attain 2 years old. That is to say, oh, don't, father, please, cried Johnny. I can't bear it when I think of Sally. Mr. Tetterby desisted. Johnny, with a profound sense of trust, wiped his eyes and hushed his sister. Your brother, Dolphus, said his father, poking the fire, is late tonight, Johnny, and will come home like a lump of ice. What got your precious mother? Here's mother and Dolphus too, father, exclaimed Johnny. I think. You're right, returned his father, listening. Yes, that's the footsteps of my little woman. The process of induction by which Mr. Tetterby had come to the conclusion that his wife was a little woman was his own secret. She would have made 2 editions of himself very easily. Considered as an individual, she was rather remarkable for being robust and portly, and her dimensions became magnificent. Nor did they assume a less imposing proportion when studied with reference to the size of her 7 sons, who were but diminutive. In case of Sally, however, Mrs. Tetterby had asserted herself at last, as nobody knew better than the victim Johnny, who weighed and measured that exacting idol every hour in the day. Mrs. Tetterby, who had been marketing and carried a basket, threw back her bonnet and shawl, and sitting down, fatigued, commanded Johnny to bring his sweet charge to her straightway for a kiss. Johnny, having complied and gone back to his stool, and again crushing himself, Master Adolphus Tetterby, who had by this time unwound his torso out of the prismatic comforter, apparently indeterminately requested the same favor. Johnny, having again complied and again gone back to his stool and again crushed himself, Mr. Tetterby, struck by a sudden thought, preferred the same claim on his own parental part. The satisfaction of this third desire completely exhausted the sacrifice, who had hardly breath enough to go back to his stool and crush himself again and pant at his relations. "Whatever you do, Johnny," said Mrs. Tetterby, shaking her head, "take care of her, or never look your mother in the face again." "Nor your brother," said Adolphus. "Nor your father, Johnny," said Mr. Tetterby. Johnny, much affected by this conditional renunciation of him, looked down at Mullock's eyes to see that they were all right so far, and skillfully patted her back, which was uppermost, and rocked her with his foot. "Are you wet, Adolphus, my boy?" said his father. "Come and take my chair and dry yourself." "No, father, thank ye," said Adolphus, smoothing himself down with his hands. "I ain't very wet, I don't think. Does my face shine much, father?" "Well, it does look waxy, my boy," returned Mr. Tetterby. "It's the weather, father," said Adolphus, polishing his cheeks on a worn sleeve of his jacket. "What, the rain and the sleet and the wind and the snow and the fog, my face gets quite brought into the rush sometimes, and shines. It does, oh, it does, though." Master Adolphus was also in the newspaper line of life, being employed by a more thriving firm than his father and company to vend newspapers at the railway station, where his chubby little person, like a shabbily designed Cupid, and his shrill little voice, he was not much more than 10 years old, were as well known as the horses panting of the locomotive running in and out. His jovialty might have been at some loss for the harmless outlet in his early application to traffic, but for a fortnight discovery he made of a means of entertaining himself, and divided the long day into stages of interest without neglecting business. His ingenious invention, remarkable like many great discoveries for its simplicity, consisted in variety and bearing the first vowel in the word paper and substituting its stead for a different period of the day, all the other vowels in grammatical succession. Thus before daylight in the winter time he went to bed, light day in the winter time he went to and fro in his little oilskin cap and cape and big comforter, piercing the heavy air with his cry, "Morning, Pepper," which about an hour before noon changed it to morning paper, which about 2 changed to morning pipper, with a couple of hours changed to morning popper, and so declined with the sun into evening pupper, and great relief and comfort of this young gentleman's spirit. Mrs. Tetterby, his lady mother, who had been sitting with her bonnet and shawl thrown back, as aforesaid, thoughtfully turned her wedding ring round and around upon her finger, now rose and divested herself of her outdoor attire, beginning to lay the cloth for supper. "Oh, dear me, dear me, dear me," said Mrs. Tetterby. "That's the way the world goes." "Which is the way the world goes, my dear?" asked Mr. Tetterby, looking around. "Oh, nothing," said Mrs. Tetterby. Mr. Tetterby evaluated his eyebrows, folded his newspaper afresh, and carried his eyes up and down and across, but wondering in his attention, and not reading it. Mrs. Tetterby, in the same time, laid the cloth, but rather as if she were polishing the table and preparing the family supper, hitting it in unnecessarily hard with the knives and forks, slapping it with the plates, denting it with the salt cellar, and coming heavily down upon it with the loaf. "Oh dear me," said Mrs. Tetterby. "That's the way the world goes." "My duck," returned her husband, looking round again, "you say that before. Which is the way the world goes?" "Oh, nothing, Sophia," remonstrated her husband. "You said that before, too." "Well, I'll say it again if you like," returning Mrs. Tetterby. "Oh, nothing there, and nothing again, if you like. Oh, nothing there, and again, and if you like, nothing now, then." Mr. Tetterby brought his eyes to bear upon his partner of his bosom, and said in a mild astonishment, "My little woman, what has put you out?" "I am sure I don't know," she retorted. "Don't ask me. Who said I was put out at all? I never did." Mr. Tetterby gave up the perusal of his newspaper as a bad job, and taking a slow walk across the room with his hands behind him and his shoulders raised, his gait accordingly perfect with the resignation of his manner, addressed himself to his 2 oldest offspring. "Your supper will be ready in a minute, Adolphus," said Mr. Tetterby. "Your mother has been out in the wet to the cook's shop to buy it. It was very good of your mother to do so. You shall get some supper too, very soon, Johnny. Your mother's pleased with you, my man, for being so attentive to your precious sister." Mrs. Tetterby, without any remark, but with decided substance in her animosity towards the table, finished her preparations, and took from her ample basket a substantial slab of hot pease pudding wrapped in paper, and a basin covered with a saucer, which, on being uncovered, set forth an odorous so agreeable that the 3 pairs of eyes in the 2 beds opened wide and fixed themselves upon the banquet. Mr. Tetterby, without regarding its imitate, he sat down and then stood, repeating slowly, "Yes, yes, your supper will be ready in a minute. Dolphus, your mother went out in the wet to the cook shop to buy it. It was very good of your mother to do so," until Mrs. Tetterby, who had been exhibiting sundry tokens of consternation behind him, caught him around the neck and wept. "Oh, Dolphus," said Mrs. Tetterby, "how could I go and behave so?" The recollection affected Adolphus the younger, and Johnny too, to a degree that they both, as with one accord, raised a dismal cry, which had the effect of immediately shutting up the round eyes in the bed and utterly rousting the 2 remaining little Titterbys just then stealing it from the adjoining closet to see what was going on in the eating way. I am sure Dolphus, sobbed Mrs. Tetterby. Coming home, I had more idea than a child unborn. Mr. Tetterby seemed to dislike the figure of speech, and observed, "Say then the baby, my dear." Had no more idea than that baby, said Mrs. Tetterby. "Johnny, don't look at me, but look at her, or she'll fall out of your lap and be killed, and then you'll die in the agonies of the broken heart, and it'll serve you right. No more idea than I had at the darling of being cross when I came home, but somehow, Dolphus," when Mrs. Tetterby paused and again turned her wedding finger a ring around and around, opened her finger. "I see," said Mrs. Tetterby. "I understand my little woman was put out. Hard times and hard weather, hard work, make it trying now and then. I see, bless your soul. No wonder. Doff, my man," he continued, Mr. Tetterby exploring the basin with a fork. "Here, your mother's been and bought the cook's shop, beside peas, I think it's pheasant pudding, and a whole knuckle of lovely roast lamb of pork, with lots of crackling left upon it, and seasoned gravy and mustard quite unlimited. Hand in your plate, my boy, and begin while it's simmering." Master Adolphus, needing no second summons, received his portion with eyes rendered moist by appetite, and withdrawing to his particular stool, fell upon his supper tooth and nail. Johnny was not forgotten, but received his ration on bread. At least he should, and flush of gravy trickle on the baby. He was required, for similar reason, to keep his pudding when when put on active service, in his pocket. There might have been pork on the knuckle bone, which knuckle bone the carver at the cook shop had assuredly not forgotten in carving for previous customers, but there was no stint of seasoning, and that is an accessory, dreamily suggesting pork and pleasantly cheating the sense of taste. The pheasant pudding, too, the gravy and mustard, like the eastern rose to respect the nightingale, if there were not absolutely pork, had lived near it. So upon the whole, there was the flavor of a middle-sized pig. It was irresistible to the Tetterbys in bed, who thought professing to slumber peacefully, crawled out when unseen by their parents and silently appealed to their brothers for any gastronomic token of fraternal affection. They had not heard a heart presently scrapes in return. It resulted in a party of light skirmishes in nightgowns, where catering about the parlor all through supper, which harassed Mr. Tetterby exceedingly, and once or twice imposed upon him the necessity of a charge, before which these guerrilla troops retired in the directions and in great confusion. Mrs. Tetterby did not enjoy her supper. There seemed to be something on Mrs. Tetterby's mind. At one time she laughed without reason, and another time she cried without reason. And at one time she laughed without reason and cried without reason, and the last time she laughed and cried together in a manner that was so unreasonable that her husband was confused. My little woman, if the world goes that way, it appears to go the wrong way and choke you.